Good morning, dear students of class 11 science. Welcome to environmental science class. We are dealing with the chapter ecology. So today we will begin with a new topic, ecological succession. Clear? So what do you mean by ecological successions? In simple term, we can define ecological succession as an orderly sequence of different communities over a period of time in a given area. That means in a given area or in a given habitat, the species keeps on changing. That means one species will be replaced by another species in an orderly manner over a period of time. So that means the first species in a given habitat will be replaced by the another species, and that species will also be replaced by the another species. So finally a community will be reached which will not be replaced, which will survive in that particular habitat. Clear? So ecological succession can be defined as an orderly sequence of different community over a period of time in a given area. So kindly note down this definition: an orderly and progressive replacement of one community. One more time: an orderly and progressive replacement of one community by another till the development of stable or climax, climax, okay, climax, till the development of stable or climax community in a given area is termed as ecological succession. Okay, note down the definition. So what we write: an orderly and progressive replacement of one community by another till the development of a stable or climax community in a particular area is known as ecological succession. Okay, so in a given area, the species or the community will keep on changing. One community will be replaced by the another community in a given area till it will reach the stable community or the climax community. Once the community will reach the climax or will become stable, then it will occupy that particular area. So this particular succession of a community in a given area over a period of time is known as ecological succession. Clear? Now, we live in such an environment which is constantly changing. Alright, it keeps on changing. The environment is influenced by the existing community surviving in a particular habitat or living in a particular area, and on the other hand, that community is also influenced by the environment. So community or the species will influence the environment of a particular area on which they are surviving, and on the other hand, the environment will also influence the community or the species present on that particular area. Clear? Okay. Now, succession occurs only when those species are able to tolerate those adverse environmental conditions. If the species are not able to tolerate those environmental conditions, then they cannot reach the stage of succession. But those species which are able to tolerate the full range of conditions, alright, the full range of environmental factors, then those species or those community can reach the stage of succession. Clear? Now, I am saying you that during succession, one community will be replaced by the another community till it will reach the stable or the climax one. Clear? So that means the existing species will bring such changes in the environment that it becomes more suitable for the other species. Clear? I say one more time, that those species which are living in a particular habitat or in a particular area will make the environment, alright, will bring the changes in the environment which will be favorable for the other coming species or the other coming environment, for the other coming community. But at the same time, that environment will become less hospitable for themselves. They are changing the environment. The existing community are changing the environment. Alright, they are making those environments suitable for the next coming community, but for themselves only, those changing environment will not be hospitable. Okay, it will be very, very tough for them to survive in those changing environmental conditions. And when they are not able to survive in the changing environmental condition, then it will be replaced by the another community. Now that community will also change the environment. Okay, and the changing environment will be favorable for another community, and for themselves it will not be compatible, it will not be hospitable. And if they are not able to tolerate those changing environmental conditions, then they will also be replaced by the next community till it will reach the stable or the climax community. Okay, so this is the main principles of ecological succession. Clear? Next one, succession is unidirectional, only in one way, and it is predictable. Okay, it always ends in a climax community which is in equilibrium with the surrounding. So succession is unidirectional, it is predictable, and it will always ends when the community will reach the climax community, and climax community is in a stable one, it is in equilibrium with the surrounding environmental conditions. Clear? The tendency to attain the equilibrium is also due to homeostasis. Homeostasis means the organism species, they will try to cope up with the environmental conditions. Okay, they will always try to maintain the body temperatures with that of the environmental conditions, and that is called homeostasis, to maintain the steady or stable body conditions with that of the environmental conditions. Clear? Succession increases the complexity of the community over time. Okay, so what is ecological succession? It is an orderly and progressive replacement of one community by the another community till it reaches the development of climax one or stable community in a given area. This is very important. Okay, always ecological succession will end when will it reach the climax community which is much more stable, and this tendency to attain the equilibrium or stability is due to the process of homeostasis, where the organisms will always try to maintain their inner body temperatures with that of the environmental conditions. They will always try to adjust with the environmental conditions. Okay, and whenever there is succession, it will increase the complexity of the community over time. Okay, so you can look in the figure also over here. So over here we have got the bare rock. Okay, then in bare rock we will find the appearance of lichen, mosses. Okay, that means it is being occupied by the species which is called the lichen. Now lichens will be replaced by the annual herb stage. That means over here one community is being replaced by the another community. So again herb stage will be replaced. Alright, it will be replaced by the another stage over here. Okay, similarly this will be replaced by the another one which is called the shrub stage, and shrub will also be replaced by the final climax community which is called the forest stage. So this forest stage is the climax community which is in state of equilibrium. So this is a simple example of ecological succession. So over here the first species to appear on the bare rock is mainly the lichens. Okay, after we will talk about that, we'll talk the name of the species which will occupy the bare area. Okay, but this is a simple example of ecological succession where one community is being replaced by the another community till it will reach the stage of climax one. Okay, after that it will not be replaced. Clear? This is the proper definition of ecological succession. Now let's go to classification of ecological succession. Clear? So succession may be classified as primary succession and secondary succession. This is very important. Okay, succession can be classified as primary succession and secondary succession. So we'll go through each one of the succession. Okay, so first of all we'll discuss about the primary succession. It says that primary succession is a kind of succession which begins on the primitive substratum. Primitive substratum means where there was no life at all. Okay, where there was not a single species. It is a barren area, a bare area where there was no life at all. Okay, so primary succession begins on a primitive substratum where there was no existence of life before. Example, bare rock, receding glaciers, newly emerged island. So those bare area where there was no sign of life. Okay, then if succession occurs on those bare area, then that is called primary succession. Okay, so kindly write this one also, definition. When succession, note it down, okay, when succession begins on primarily bare area, B-A-R-E, on bare area which has not been previously occupied by a community, then it is known as primary succession. Okay, so whenever the succession occurs on a bare area which has not a sign of the existing of a single species or a community, then those succession is known as primary succession. For example, bare rock. Kind of note it down. Okay, now the first group of organisms, very carefully, the first group of organisms, it may be plant or it may be animal, which becomes established in such an area is known as pioneer species or the pioneer community. That means the first species to appear on the bare area is known as pioneer species. For example, when we're talking about the rock, bare rock, where there is no sign of life, then on those bare rock, let us take example, if the lichens will appear, okay, if the lichens will appear on those bare area, then those lichens are the first species to appear. Okay, then they are known as the pioneer species or the pioneer community. So you can look over here. So this is simply the bare rock. Okay, so in this bare rock you can see the appearance of lichens. So lichens are known as the pioneer community because they are the first one to appear on the bare area or the bare rock. Clear? So pioneer species are those species, clear, or those organisms which may be plant, which may be animal, which become established in such an area where earlier there was no sign of life. Clear? So this pioneer community, over a period of time, they will make the environment conducive for the other life form. So first of all, there will be appearance of the pioneer species. Then this pioneer species will change the environment that we have discussed right now, right? So the pioneer species will change the environment in such a way that those changing environment will be suitable, will be conducive for the coming next community. But for the same existing community, it will be less hospitable. So therefore, it will be changed by the another community. So what is primary succession? Primary succession is a kind of succession which occurs on a primitive substratum where there was no existence of life, or we can say that primary succession begins on primarily bare area which has not been occupied previously by any community, and the first community that appears on such an area is known as pioneer community, and those pioneer community will change the environment in such a way that it becomes conducive for the other coming community, but for the same one it will be less hospitable. So it will be replaced by the next community. Clear? Now let's go next one, the secondary succession. Okay, now what is secondary succession? Now before that, coming into the secondary successions, next one I want to mention over here in primary succession is that since primary succession occurs in a bare area or in a barren habitat, so that means this particular habitat will be devoid of soil or will be devoid of those conditions which will be not sufficient for to support the existence of life. We total a barren area, a virgin land, we can say. Okay, so soils will be absent in such habitat, and there will be no organic matter. So that means in such habitat, for the occurrence of life, it is very, very tough. For the survival of the community, for the existence of species, it will be very, very tough, because there is no soil, there is no organic matter, which are essential for the growth of the plants or for the survival of animals. So primary succession takes a very longer period of time. Clear? Now let's go to second successions, but can you remember that primary successions takes a longer period of time, because there is no soils, there is no organic matter which will support the existence of life. Clear? Then comes the secondary successions, which are kind of succession that takes place on a substratum where life has already existed. Are you getting the difference? In primary succession, succession occurs on such an area where there was no sign of life before. But in secondary succession, right, in secondary succession, you can say that it takes place on a substratum where there was existence of life before. That means one community is being changed by the another community, because this second succession occurs on a substratum where there was sign of life. But in primary succession, it was totally on a barren area where there was no sign of life before. But here in secondary succession, you can say that it occurs on a substratum where life has already existed. Okay, so my questions for you all will be that which successions will be much more quicker, primary or secondary? Just think of it. Okay, which successions will occur within a short period of time and which will occur very, very easily? Is it primary succession or is it secondary succession? Okay, just think of it. I'll give the answer afterwards. Clear? Now, the previous community gets wiped out due to the external factor like man-made forest fire, change in the climatic conditions, or some other biotic factor. So those life that was already there, that has been wiped out, that has become extinct or has been removed due to the external factor, which can be due to the man-made forest fire, due to the change in environmental conditions or the environmental factor, or due to the change in the biotic factor. Okay, and in secondary succession, soil is usually present because life was there previously, so soil was there, organic matter was there, and it also carries seeds and the roots by the bygone community. Okay, so here you can simply answer that secondary succession will take place much more rapidly than the primary succession, because in the primary succession there was no soil, there was no organic matter to support the existence of life. But in secondary succession, succession occurs on a substratum where life was there previously, and since life was there previously, there was soil, there was organic matter. Okay, and those organic matter and those soils present in that particular substratum will favor the growth of plants and animals very, very rapidly. So secondary succession occurs much more rapidly as compared to the primary succession. Clear? This will be an answer. If the question comes, which succession occurs much more easily and rapidly, then the answers will be secondary succession, because already in secondary succession, the previous community or the bygone community has left the soil, has left the organic matter, which will support the existence of life. Clear? Now, the main causes of secondary successions are simply of two types: autogenic and allogenic. Okay, the main causes of this type of successions are autogenic and allogenic. Now, what is autogenic and what is allogenic? Now, look in the text over here. It says that the cause of this succession is biotic in nature. Factors like production of detritus, trapping of solar energy by the leaves, water and nutrients uptake, recycling of nutrients leads to ecological change in the environment that leads to ecological succession. So I'll discuss it afterwards, but for now kindly write this one. When a community, write down under autogenic, okay, when a community is replaced due to the modification of environment, write it down, when a community is replaced due to the modification of environment by living organisms. by living organisms, the succession is called autogenic. So one more time, when a community is replaced due to the modification of environment by living organism, the succession is called autogenic. Okay, that is autogenic succession. Write down, that is autogenic succession is driven by biotic component of an ecosystem. Done. So in autogenic succession, a community will be replaced by another community due to the modification of environment. When the environmental conditions will be changed by the living organisms living on that habitat or area, then that type of succession is called autogenic succession. And autogenic succession is always triggered by biotic factor. And what are those factors? It can be due to the productions of detritus, trapping of solar energy by the plants, okay, water and nutrient cycles, okay, recycling of nutrients. So these are all the biotic factors which will lead to the change or the modification in the environment, leading to the replacement of one community by the another community, that leads to ecological succession. So in autogenic succession, one community will be replaced by the another community due to the change in the environmental factors or the conditions by the living organisms, okay, and it's always driven by the biotic factor. Now next one, abiotic factor, that leads to allogenic succession. Okay, biotic factor leads to autogenic succession, but abiotic factor means non-living factor, they will lead to allogenic succession. So allogenic succession, write this one down. This type takes place due to some external factor which causes the existing community to be displaced by the another one. Okay, so write this one. In allogenic succession, write it down. In allogenic succession, a community replaces other community due to forces other than the effects of the communities on the environment. One more time. In allogenic succession, a community replaces other community due to forces other than the effects of the communities on the environment. Okay, and those other factors that will lead to the change of the community, it can be due to volcanic eruption, flooding, landslides, erosion, or human interaction. And all these factors are abiotic factors. So that's why I'm saying that abiotic factors leads to the allogenic succession, whereas biotic factor leads to autogenic succession. So in allogenic succession, a community will be replaced by the another community not due to the factors being triggered by the change of the environment by the living organisms, but here it will be brought by the abiotic factor. The change in the community by other community occurs due to the abiotic factors like volcanic eruptions, landslides, flooding, erosion, or by human interactions, okay, or it can also due to the grazing animals. So autogenic succession is triggered by the biotic factors where the environmental conditions will be changed by the living organisms, whereas abiotic factors will lead to the allogenic successions. Clear? Okay, now next one, stages of succession. What are the different stages of succession? This is very important. Okay, so we'll go through it. We'll discuss about the different stages of succession. So first one, ecological succession is the observed process of change in the species structure of an ecological community over time. That means in a given area, over a period of time, one community or species will be replaced by the another species. So we will find the appearance of different types of species during the process of ecological succession. And we know that there are two types of ecological succession: primary succession and the secondary succession. Okay, so first of all we will start with the primary community or the primary succession. And primary succession occurs on such a habitat where there was no existence of life before. Okay, so therefore the first species that occurs on such barren area or on such habitat is known as pioneer species. So pioneer species are the first species to appear on the bare area or the bare habitat where there was no existence of life. So write this one under pioneer species. It is the first community or species developing over a bare area. It is the first community developing over a bare area. Write it down under pioneer species. Okay. This community has a little diversity and takes a long period of time in converting. This community has a little diversity and takes a long period of time in converting the bare area suitable for the second or seral community, SERAL, seral community. Full stop. Members of pioneer community have a high rate of growth and a short lifespan. One more time. Members of pioneer community have a high rate of growth and a short lifespan. Therefore, they produces a large amount of organic matter. Full stop. So pioneer species are the first one to appear on the bare habitat or the bare area. Clear? They have got a little diversity, so they will take a longer period of time in converting the barren area to make it suitable for the existence of life. Clear? And these particular community members have a very high rate of growth and a short lifespan, and they will produce enough amount of organic matter so that it will be available to the next coming community called the seral community. Okay. Now, since this this pioneer species or the pioneer community will adjust to the prevailing conditions, because they are the one to appear on the bare area and they have to adjust to the prevailing conditions of their habitat. So it's also called ecasis. Okay, it's also called ecasis, ECESIS, ecasis. Okay, and after ecasis, the members of the pioneer community increases in number because they have a high rate of growth. Okay, so within a short period of time, we can say that they will grow rapidly. Alright, they will grow rapidly in number by reproduction. So this is called aggregation. So when the number of pioneer community species keeps on increasing, then that is called aggregation. Okay. Now, as the population of the pioneer species increases, there will be competitions. Alright. The individuals of the species will affect each other, and in that process they will modify one another in a process called co-action. Alright, so what is that? So when the number of population keeps on increasing, there will be competitions, they will affect each other, they will modify each other, and this process is known as co-action. And the organisms will modify the environment, alright, in such a way that those changing environment will not be suitable for the existing community, and this stage is called the reaction, because that changing environment will be hospitable for the next coming community. So therefore, when the changing environment will not be suitable for the present species or the community, then that species will be replaced by the another species. Clear? And that replacing community is known as seral community. SERAL is known as seral community. So write down under seral community. Okay, this community develops in the area. Write down under seral community. These communities develops in the area after the pioneer community. This community develop in the area after the pioneer community, but before the climax community. That means in between the pioneer and the climax we have got seral community. Okay, so one more time saying that this community develops in the area after the pioneer community but before the climax communities make their appearance. Full stop. Seral community slowly build soil, BUILD, build soil, comma, increase in biodiversity, okay, increase in biodiversity, comma, niche, NICHE, niche specialization, SPECIALISATION, niche specialization, and biogeochemical cycling, full stop. Succession species that develops later are slow growing and long lived. Succession species that develop later are slow growing and long lived. Full stop. Clear? So pioneer species are changing the environment in such a way that that changing environment is not suitable for their existence. So it will be replaced by the another community which is called the seral community. Okay, so seral community occurs after the pioneer community but before the climax community, and this seral community will slowly build up the soil, they will increase the biodiversity, okay, but they have a very slow growth rate, but they have got long lived nature. Okay, now after the seral community comes the next community which is called the climax community. Okay, so in the end a community becomes more or less stabilized, or they will reach the stage of equilibrium, okay, and that is called the climax community, and each stage in the process of development is called the sera, SERA, sera. So ultimately succession occurs when the community will reach the climax one. Clear? So first we have got pioneer species followed by seral community, and ultimately that community will reach the stage of equilibrium which is called the climax community, and therefore succession will be over. Okay, now secondary succession, it mainly takes place on a substratum where there was appearance of life earlier, okay, because the previous community may have disappeared due to the biodegradability factor. It can be due to landslides like volcanic eruptions, forest fire, or climatic changes, and this succession takes place more rapidly than the primary succession. Clear? So this is very, very important. So in today's class we have just finished the ecological succession, where we have discussed about primary succession, secondary succession, autogenic and allogenic. Then we have discussed the different stages of succession, where we have discussed about the pioneer community, we have discussed about the seral community and the climax community. So this much for today. We will continue in the next class. Thank you.